Hello, hello! I am the Fiend, and for all of you newcomers, welcome to the channel. In today's guide, I am going to be going over 5 super spicy Highlander tips that I did not previously cover in my other video, the complete Highlander guide. I tried to cover everything I possibly could in that video, so if you haven't seen it and are looking to improve your Highlander skills, be sure to check it out. I will put a link somewhere on screen. But that being said, I did miss a few things in the video, and today I would like to share 5 new tips with you guys. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you to please like and subscribe. It helps me out an absolute ton, and we are creeping up on 3,000 subs. Also, if we can get this video to that mark, I would love to put out a second round of tips for all you Highlanders out there. With that, let's get to tip number 1. And that has to do with how your Hitstun affects your kick mix-up in offensive stance. The gist of this tip is essentially that it's important to consider the Hitstun duration of your attacks while you're in offensive stance. For example, if you are using your offensive lights on your opponent and then you go for a kick, any 500 millisecond attack will clash with you and hit you at the same time as your kick hits them. Many heroes have access to 500 millisecond attacks, and Highlander himself is one of the only heroes whose lights are not 500 milliseconds. This means that most heroes will be able to hit you with a light before your kick hits them if you've been hitting them with offensive lights yourself. If they have a 400 millisecond light, this is absolutely going to be the case. The best way to deal with this is going to be to predict and parry the light. Your Heavy and Celtic Curse will have enough hit stun to prevent you from getting hit before being able to perform your kick, so lights aren't so much of a worry. But when you're using your offensive lights, you should be aware of this and potentially consider just feinting out and parrying rather than attempting a kick. That, or a dodge and kick, works just as well. And now, on to tip number 2, which has to do with Highlander's out of lock punish. So in my first guide I explained that Highlander's max out of lock punish is a top heavy into a top heavy, and this is still true. I also talked about how you can do a Celtic Curse into a top heavy instead, and that is also true, but there is something else that you should know. Sometimes when you do a Celtic Curse from one side or the other into a top heavy, your opponent is able to lock on again and still block your attack. For this reason, I would recommend either just doing heavy into top heavy or doing Celtic Curse from the top. I have personally stopped using it from the sides because it does seem to be unreliable. Moving on to tip number 3, we are going to start talking about 4v4. I know a lot of Highlanders have trouble in 4v4. I do as well. It's kind of just part of the territory of the character to a certain extent. But at the same time, there are some things you can do to get a leg up and an edge. And to start, we're going to be talking about how to deal with one of the most pain in the ass feats of all time, especially for Highlander, and that is Rocksteady. The way I deal with Rocksteady is that I primarily focus on kicks. So I will dodge forward and try and bait them into dodging and get them with a kick. And the other thing you can do, and this is kind of the main tip here, and that is that you can get a caber toss, and when they get to stand up from the caber toss, you go for the unblockable heavy, but you soft feint that into a kick. Usually they'll try and parry you, thinking you didn't know that they had Rocksteady, and then you can get the kick, and that is a way to still use your kick grab mix-up. But keep in mind that it takes a lot of stamina, and so it really may not be a great option unless you have revenge. Tip number 4 is one that I've been having a little bit too much fun myself with lately, and that is going to be Highlander's Caber Toss Gank. Now, this is something that you might need to do primarily if you're playing on a team with a buddy, somebody that you can strategize and plan a little bit with. Highlander is particularly easy and vulnerable to interrupt during his punishes sometimes, and so playing with randos, this isn't always great. So I do feel for you benefit in that. But if you do have somebody that you can trust, a lot of times using Highlander's Caber Toss can be done a lot like Lawbringer's Longarm. You can do it with 2 Highlanders, you can do it with Highlander to complement another hero, but the basic idea is that, say for example, a Jormungandr gets a knockdown on somebody and does the slam. As that player is getting up, you can do your Caber Toss, which gives you a heavy and guarantees your Jormungandr opponent an opportunity to get their ground slam again. The same works with 2 Highlanders, and in this case you would have one Highlander start with a Caber Toss, the next Highlander would do a Caber Toss of their own during the heavy punish, and then both Highlanders would finish off that Caber Toss with a double top heavy. That usually is enough to finish opponents in a single go. Lastly, for tip number 5, I want to talk a little bit about playing defensively with Highlander using his superior lights. So it's important to note that Highlander has superior lights from all 3 sides, but on top of that, backlighting is already a really big part of most Highlanders kits as far as how they access offensive form. Going and doing a backlight is a really big part of how you would normally play Highlander anyway, and so incorporating backlights into your crushing counter attempts can be really valuable both in duels and as well as in 4v4. Yes, if you are trying to use your superior lights too much and it's getting obvious, opponents will definitely bait it out and get light parry punishes on you. So this is something that you'll need to use accordingly if that's happening. But if you're smart about it, you can try to prevent this as much as possible by backstepping when you try and perform crushing counters. This makes it a lot less likely that you will be parried or directly punished for throwing that light, and it also is kind of a Hail Mary, hey, if anybody attacks me right now, I'm going to crush and counter it. And that can be really useful in 4v4 situations, since an attack can be blocked or parried either from the direction of the person that's standing externally or from the direction that they actually threw the attack. A lot of times it makes it really safe to just throw out a backstep light in the direction of an external opponent in 4v4, and a lot of times you'll end up coming out of that with an external crushing counter, which not only looks awesome, but is incredibly fun and rewarding to perform. And with that, I think that is going to be it for the video today. Thank you so much for watching this far. I really appreciate it. Please let me know if you have any suggestions for other videos, ideas, or things you'd like to see down in the comments below. Thank you as always for being here. This is The Fiend, and I look forward to catching you next time.